Today guys, it's a perfect day for doing this type of video since it's raining. It's kind of a muggy day, and of course we're talking about a difficult topic, which is of course saying goodbye. And today we're going to focus on specifically saying goodbye to our pets. While my recent loss has actually been my dog Lucy, I'm now starting to consider this for other animals because we have a lot of geriatric animals at our barn. So, you know, in their early years, including I'm going to start today and talk about my horses. One of the things, interesting thing I find is, you know, most people, the hardest part is really making that decision when it's time that you have to let them go. When is it time to make that decision? That's the hardest thing in my life to make. I have a very difficult time to make that. And interestingly enough, I find I more struggle for when I make that decision too late rather than too early. And I'm not alone. Recently, I just read an article about a veterinarian who said out of all of their clients that they've interviewed, they've never once had a person say, I put my animal down too soon, that it was too early and I regret it. It's always about too late. So the question is, when is it time? So here I have, this is Jewel. If you're in my lecture class, you've met her. She's a geriatric horse, and she has a respiratory condition called HEAVES. Think of it as like asthma for horses. So this past year, especially as it's gotten warmer, it's gotten a lot harder on her. So she's having to work a lot harder, just like with asthma patients, you got to work harder to breathe. So as it's become hot and humid with this weather, it's become a lot harder. With that having to work so hard, one of the things that I noticed is she started to lose weight. Okay, she's usually a pudgy horse that can live off of rocks, literally, and all of a sudden she started to lose weight. So that's one of the first signs when you're trying to make that decision on your older animal, they start to hit those geriatric years, they're slowing down, is when they start losing weight and you can't seem to get it back on them. That's a concern. Okay, so we've changed her diet up to start to address some of those issues. Consulted our veterinarian and started working on that. But that's one of the first things. Then next, if all of a sudden I change this diet and the horse is reluctant to, or your dog or cat is reluctant to eat, if they start to show those differences, then at that point then you start to wonder. Other things is that they change their social behaviors. You know, she's a very social animal. She wants to come up and interact. She wants to interact with other horses, even other animals. So if all of a sudden she's kind of excluded, you hear all the time about dogs, you know, wandering off when they really realize it's time to die. That's honestly what my dog Lucy kept trying to do. And I kept bringing her back. But she was trying to tell me it's time. So if she becomes less social and not wanting to interact, that is a concern. Okay, so those are those indicators we really need. They can't speak, but they can tell us in other ways when it is time. So let's talk about some other things like behavior, okay? So we're kind of a little bit about her social interaction, but just personalities, we'll see some changes. So I'm going to introduce you to our other geriatric horse. So I've got two geriatric horses here that are battling some health conditions. All right, so this is Val. She's also in her 20s. Right now you see her ears went back as soon as I started petting on her. So she's grumpy. She doesn't like to really be loved on, not like Jewel. She pins those ears back. She wants to fuss at, you know, Jewel's over here like, hey, I want the attention, where she's sitting there pinning and arguing with me. Unless I have a treat, and look at her fuss at the other horses. So it's a different personality. So if all of a sudden she starts having issues where she doesn't want to be friendly, as you can see there, and she's not fussing at us, I know that's not good for her. When she starts sulking and moping and I can start babying and loving on her, that's not Val. So that's what we're looking for here. So you'll notice my son here is brushing and grooming on her. One of the problems you get into a lot of times is the older animals that have a difficult time thermoregulating, like shedding off their hair, bringing in new hair. So again, diet helps with the hair coat, you know, protein levels, supplements like biotin, fatty acids, those kinds of omega-3, omega-6, but also just grooming and whatnot. At that time, that's a good time to take advantage of as you're grooming to look for issues that may be a problem. All of a sudden they're more sensitive, they're more sore. Maybe they started, their hair coat's getting worse, or they're not growing new hair. So again, neglecting an older horse is a common mistake, or even an older animal. We kind of get used to them, we're more interested in the puppies and kittens, then all of a sudden we don't have that opportunity to really check them out. So again, even with, and there she's fussing, this is normal for her, and Nick just pushes her aside. If we don't pay attention to our older animals on a daily basis, that's when they can slip really quickly, okay? So those are things that you want to watch out for, all right? So we'll go ahead, we're going to go back to, we'll leave them alone. We'll talk about some things you can do. One thing, obviously, again, is, try to keep them happy. Make sure diet, don't go overboard on snacking and overfeeding them, because heavy weight can actually be really hard on your older animal. But at the same time, we want to really show that interaction and interact with them and try to make it a good positive activity. So Val loves her treats. If you notice, when I first walked up to her, Val, gal, she puts her ears forward until she realizes I don't have treats. So that's one thing that I can do to kind of help out is, again, find that happy experience with your animal. But again, watch, you don't want to overfeed them, because that excess weight can be an issue. I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone, because this actually has some joint supplement within it to help with their older joints. So again, there may be stuff you can do therapeutically to help in slowing that aging process down. However, if you wait too long, like for Jewel with the breathing issue, we've done some supplements and helped with her, but there gets to a point that there's just so much more we can do, okay? One of the things I'll notice here is both of these horses are actually in the barn. Of course, it's raining, but the other reason why is, along with the breathing issue for Jewel, is Val is having issues with not sweating appropriately. So she has what we call anhydrosis. So again, going back to, you'll see a lot of times in older horses having a hard time thermoregulating. Those are things that you want to look for, okay? If all of a sudden your dog is like excessively panting and it's not really hot out, that's a sign of them not being able to really cool themselves down. So again, that's where I say proper weight balance will help with that. Adjusting where they live will help with that. I joke I'm going to make this an air-conditioned barn. I'm not kidding. But like I said, doing little things like that can help. But at some point you got to see, is my management practices, all the things I'm doing, are they not as happy? So if I walk up to Val and I give her a treat and she's not happy to see that treat, I know that's a sign of an issue, okay? Last thing, so as your horse gets older, you look at a lot of expenses with health-related issues. There are some insurance policies out there, but unfortunately, a lot of times when they get older, you may not be able to get covered. So that's kind of a younger horse thing that you should look at, is health insurance. There's also mortality insurance too. So a friend of mine had a horse, and you can have this also on, let's say, a registered dog, for example. And what we found is that when that horse died, she was able to go ahead and get reimbursed for what she lost. And so that may be something, if you invest a lot, you may want to think of. But the problem is when you get to this age, a lot of those policies are not available for you, okay? So that's something to consider. The other thing is, if you have some of those health-related policies or mortality policies, there's a lot of restrictions on. Like, one of the hardest part we have to make is when to put the horse down. When you have mortality insurance, they jump in and they tell you when it's time to put him down. And that's really difficult at that point. They've got to make the decision if they can't do more to hold off on that. So again, really check those policies out if that's an option for you. So then you finally have to make the decision of putting your animal down. And so again, you need to look at options of where you are finally going to bury them. If you do that at your veterinary clinic, a lot of times talk to them beforehand on what the options are. Can they send you, again, maybe, ashes if they cremate them? What can you do? If they put you down, can you bring the animal home and bury it yourself? So most of my animals actually have been put down on our property. So I haven't had to worry about it. We've been able to bury them here, and that's great. Again, there are restrictions from counties, cities, whatnot, so you want to check to make sure that that is allowed. Now, one of the horses I was not able to do that with was my horse Tex. So here I've got pictures, and you can see on my slides I also have pictures. Unfortunately, he ended up passing away while we were on a road trip to Wisconsin. We were at a show. And so we had to look at what options. I felt like there wasn't any closure for him. The clinic was wonderful, but again, we couldn't bring that horse all the way home from, after we put him down from Wisconsin all the way to Mississippi. So one of the things I was really pleasantly surprised at the time, I really wasn't in a really good frame of mind, is that they ended up sending, if I can dig down into here, his horseshoes. And this was not a request, and I've got actually some of his hair. They gave me some hair, and then they gave me his horseshoes, and they wrapped it up and actually sent me a card. So they sent me a piece of his tail, and then also sent me, they didn't even ask me if I wanted that. So what I did was, as you can see, is I stuck the hair, the shoes, his halter. They did also send me my halter, one of his ribbons that he won, along with his show number at the show, and some pictures. Our goal is to now take this and actually bury it with our other animals. So he may not be down there with the other animals, his body, but a part of him is. So again, however you may go through that grieving process will be helpful, but you need to start early thinking about it. Like I said, if the animal clinic hadn't thought about that for me and took the initiative to send that stuff to me, it would have been later on, and I would have said, oops. And then when I called them, that stuff wouldn't have been available. So again, you want to have that conversation with your veterinarian well before you get to that sudden issue. So again, those are some things to think about. There are some wonderful, helpful websites. Also, if you're going through the grieving process of a pet, there are some wonderful support groups. So take advantage of that. But like I said, the first place to start is talking to your veterinarian.